Live, the Extraordinary Advisor Show. My name is Ellen Rogin, and as always, I have really amazing guests to share information with you to help you grow in every area of your life, especially your business. And today, our expert who we have on is a newer friend of mine, Kafi London, and I'll give you her bio in a minute, but I really think this conversation we're going to have is so meaningful and important in every part of your life. And it's really about how to set yourself up so that you don't have burnout in your business or your life. What are some strategies we can use? And I think this is so important as advisors and as leaders with your clients, with your team, with your family, to be able to have strategies for this. And it's not just a kind of nice to have. I think it's actually crucial to being as successful as you can be in every area of your life. So let me introduce our amazing guest, Kafi London. And Kafi specializes in helping leaders bounce back before they have burnout. So not like, what do you do, but like, how do you set the stage so that's not a situation that you're in? Her clients, to her clients, she's known as the fire starter. I love that because she provides the spark for those who find their own fire diminishing a little bit. So I like, how do you turn up the volume on that or the power? Following 27 years in a leadership career as a consultant and trusted advisor with really big corporations, and her clients were companies like Coca-Cola and Hewlett-Packard and Kimberly-Clark. Kafi is now sought after speaker, trainer, mentor who leads programs to help leaders get more energized and really clear on who they are and the work that they do, and ultimately creating a bigger impact. She's an author where she co-authored 3 books in the 303 Solutions series on reaching goals, communicating effectively, and boosting creativity. And I am so excited for her new book that will be forthcoming called Fired Up, How Leaders Turned On. Yay, Kafi. Welcome. I'm so glad you're here.
Thank you, Ellen. It's a pleasure to be here and be your guest today. I am so excited.
Yeah, so Kafi was one of the few people during quarantine and COVID that I actually got to network with in person. We knew each other online for quite a while, and she's in Atlanta and I was down there. We had a beautiful walk in Piedmont Park and really loved learning more about your business, Kafi, and was so excited that you were willing to come on the show to talk about this idea of how do you prevent burnout before it's even an issue. You know, advisors have a higher level of stress than the average population. Mm-hmm. And I think it's because there's a lot of things as an advisor that you're holding the space for. You're holding the space for your clients' anxieties around money, which is one of the biggest areas.
Yeah.
You're dealing with something that we can't have no control over, which is the economy and the markets, and that can feel difficult. And then you've probably got a team or coworkers that you deal with, not even talking about like the rest of your life outside of work.
Yeah.
So like, what do you see in terms of for leaders and people in their own businesses, whether they're smaller businesses or larger businesses, is some of the issues that can bring about this feeling of burnout?
Yeah. Well, first of all, Ellen, I want to thank you so much for inviting me on as your guest. And it's a pleasure to be here. And it was so exciting to meet you and go for that long walk that we had. So that was super exciting. But yes, I love getting into this topic, and especially for leaders, for trusted advisors, for all of us, what happens is often we're on this quest of life. And as we're on this quest, we kind of get lost a little along the way. Whether you're a corporate person or in fact run your own business, what I found is it's not so much the love of what we do, it's all the other stuff that we have to do that causes the burnout, right? So if we run our own practice, for example, the types of things aren't the day-to-day of, let's say, for financial advisors, of telling people about money, because that's what we love to do. but it's all the stuff, if you like, the building the business stuff, right? It's like the sales cycle, how long it takes to find your clients, how long you've got to keep up the relationship and just keep going and going. Those type of anxieties that often lead to burnout when we look beyond the day-to-day things. And what happens, it becomes layers upon layers upon layers of stress that really just ends up, just taking us off guard. And before we know it, we've hit rock bottom.
One of the things I see with advisors a lot is when you are mentioning things, it's also compliance. So this is an industry that is extremely regulated. If they're part of a larger company, there's people that are reading your emails and making sure that clients, you're not being too promissory with clients, and then all these other forms and documents that need to be filled out. And I think that it can wear advisors down, besides all those other things like building the business and hiring people. I'm working with a lot of advisors now that are very busy and don't have the right team in place, or their team isn't kind of happy. So it's a lot of, I feel like it's plates juggling
it's juggling all these different balls in the air. And we've all heard the analogy of having, juggling glass balls and keeping them all in the air without one dropping, because it's the most delicate one that drops and breaks. So it's like, how do we keep it all going? Or more to the fact, what are the warning signs that may occur sometimes before we even get there? Because it doesn't often just happen overnight, right? Often we don't just go from green to red. There's this phase that happens and we miss the warning signs. So I think that's some of the key things that we often have to look out for.
So what are some of the warning signs that someone might be like going towards the edge? They're a little too close to the edge.
Yeah. I'm going to tell you a little story here, which was really interesting because just a few weeks ago, I was actually going to get some gas. I had to stop for a minute because in England we say petrol. So I'm like, am I talking about gas or petrol? I literally just got back from the UK. So I was just finding my words. So I was at Costco here trying to get some gas. And as I did, it was a fairly hot day at the time. My indicator on my temperature gauge went up super high. It just went up super high. And I was like, something was off, right? Something was off, but I was going to ignore it. But I thought, oh, let me just pull in and get some gas. As I got my gas, and then I pulled to the side and just stopped for a second. And I'm like, let me jump out. Let me go do something so that the temperature cools down. I don't know what's going on, but I knew my car, right? As we do. And the analogy is we know our bodies. So literally that moment, I called the mechanic and I said, hey, my car's running a little hot. Actually, I didn't say that. What I said to him was, can I come in for your oil change, is what I said, as we do, right? I said, can I come in for oil change? And he did. And as they did, they noticed there was something wrong with one of the pipes underneath the car. And so they said, you're lucky you came in now. Otherwise, it could have been a much bigger problem and you would have found yourself on the side of the freeway. So whenever I think back to that story, it reminds me of the signs of burnout, that we see some of the warning signs. Like for me, it was a temperature gauge, and that was me instant, like, stop, there's something off. But often we would just keep driving around. Same with our bodies, right? It could be that we're starting to gain weight. It could be that we're not sleeping well. It could be that we were always mad, and sometimes we want to just get irritated by the smallest little things. So there's a number of the normal warning signs, and we know our bodies. We know when we're in optimum health, and we know when something is off. But if we ignore them, that's when they can escalate and obviously get a lot worse. So just back to the analogy of what happened with the car, it literally scared me at that point when he goes, it could have been nasty, because we've seen a lot of these cases where what happened to you, it would have been, calling the tow guy, and it would have been a much bigger issue. So, yeah.
So is that where you see that people end up in burnout, where they're just like, oh, I'll just tough through this, it'll be fine, and they're ignoring those signs? Is that where you see that it leads to the really big problems?
Yeah, what happens is we just keep pushing through. I feel that we are, and I say we as a royal we, which is all of us, we are wired for success. we are pre-programmed with, we got to keep pushing for success. That's often our culture, that's our upbringing, that's our goal, that's what we're wired for. And often it's a monetary goal, but there's some sort of success we're pushing for. And what happens is that's what we're focused on. And so when we're focused on that, we just do whatever we need to keep doing to do it, rather than just sometimes taking time to give ourselves permission to just slow down. And one of the key things, and we can talk more about in a second, is that it's so important sometimes to just slow down so we can speed up, right? Because often we're just going, and then we crash and burn. And I remember for me, when I was actually in some of my corporate positions, I had two speeds. Go, or stop and sleep. Go. And then when I tried to sleep, it was just in moments of time. There was no continuous sleep because there was always something on my brain. I wake up with anxiety. I got to get emails to the client. I had to, manage this $1 million project or whatever it was. There's all this stuff going on, and there's signs that something is off.
So what are some things that people can do when they've noticed, like, okay, the indicator light is on, something's not right? I was just talking to an advisor before we got on who I'm doing some consulting work with, and she's busy, like her business is taking off, but she is very aware that she is so anxious about this because she's got so many things she's handling. Okay, so what do you do about that besides the notice part, which I would think would be huge? What are some other strategies that people can use?
The big thing, first of all, is as we talked about, the awareness of it, because you've got to know where you are when you're in optimal health. So just the awareness that there's all this stuff going on in your life that's really starting to go off kilter. I mean, we try and avoid it, but we know when things are out of control. So that's one of the first main things. The second is just really, when you know things are starting to go off, is to just really know that you need to come up with a new strategy to do something different, right? So often we look at what are key measures of success. And often it's, as I said earlier on, sometimes it's money driven, sometimes it's time, it's family, or whatever else. So one of the key things I like to do, other than the regular things that we know we should be doing, which we talk about taking walks, meditation, and everyone does that already. So I'm not saying they're not important. That's kind of the layer one. The next layer above that, which I feel is where we need to shift to, is changing our habits, and more importantly, changing what I call our rules of engagement, which is how we engage with people and how we go about what we're doing, and what really are our critical success factors for what we're doing with our jobs and in our lives.
So give an example of what you mean by rules of engagement.
Yeah. So often, and I would go this with my practice, and this is what happened with me. And also recently I spoke to an advisor, and he was in the same. So what would happen is his goal was to get X number of clients over a period of time. And as we talked about, that can take a long time just to try and get those clients in all the time. And it was all about making calls, posting, and doing all the regular things that we do, picking up the phone, cold calling, let's get to people, let's do this. And one of the things that he and I talked about was just shifting that to different rules of engagement, which is what really lit him up. So what could make that fun? Because it was about going from just the money-driven side of things to like, how can I change this so this is more fun? So instead of being transactional, as in doing this, I need a new client, it's like, how can I not only build a relationship, but how can I get more joy? So from that, it was things like, well, for me and for him in his instance, it was like, how can I put a smile on my family's face more often? How many Christmas cards can I get? So it was more from that aspect. It's like different rules of engagement that brought a different currency of success rather than just money.
Well, I see that. And I know with the advisors I work with, and when I used to work with individuals, money people think is the driver, but for very few people, it's way more of the benchmark, like to know how far you've gotten, versus actually the goal.
Yeah. It's like I said, when we are programmed, when we originally start our career, there's that ladder of success, and we think at the top of that, it's money. And I think it was Stephen Covey had that quote who says, you know, what we don't want to do is climb the ladder of success and then realize the ladder's leaning against the wrong wall, right? And that's one of those things where we get up there and we're like, oh, this is not where I want to be, which is in fact what happened to me. And sure, I was earning a great salary, doing a great job and all of that, but I realized the motivator wasn't money anymore. And it was more about doing something that lit me up from the inside. And that initially, and it's continued to like just immediately change the stress factor. It's like, what was important to me and how can I have different rules that would make me really light up from the inside and get fired up, rather than just like, oh, I've got to pick up a phone again, I've got to go to another meeting and I've got to do this. So it's just changing those rules of engagement. And it might be, how can I have a really wonderful conversation where all I want is a yes from a client, rather than I need them to sign the bottom line. That's a different rule where it just reduces the stress a little bit. And I think the other big thing, Ellen, that I've realized is everything takes time. It takes longer than we realize to build a practice, to connect and build relationships. And what I realized is that I had to give myself permission to know that it would take a little longer, which can often be hard when you're being pushed to like deliver. So, but yeah.
I want to go back to this idea of slowing down to speed up. And you had said, you know, of course you exercise and spend time outside and meditate, but that's honestly not in a course for a lot of people that I've worked with. And this idea of slowing down to speed up, the metaphor that's coming to mind, I'm a newish, maybe 3 or 4 months Peloton rider.
Oh, yeah.
And yes, so I know you know well more about the whole spin world than I do.
Yeah.
But this idea of you can't go like hard, you can't do a HIIT class or a super hard class every single day. You need to like take a rest day or do something else to really get stronger. But I don't think that comes naturally for a lot of people in our society, that it's really okay that you actually do better when you take a break. So can you talk a bit about your experience with your clients, or the other part of, you know, your background where you see people like working too hard?
Yeah, what we've seen is that when the clients are working super hard, like you said, they go to a similar, if you like, form of exercise that is also as stressful, right? So when you are doing the HIIT thing or the spin thing, you are just like pushing. So really you're just transferring that energy from one form to another. You're like, okay, let me go. There's a time when either I or sometimes I speak to my high performing clients and they're like, okay, here I am, I'm going and I'm working out every day of the week and I'm just going, I've got to get this stress out, I'm just got to get caffeine, whatever. And sometimes you just need to pause in between that. And I know that when we've looked at their programming, sometimes it's better off and they get actually better results to do maybe 2 or 3 days on. Take a day in between to do a different form of activity, right? We've heard a lot about just cross-training, and cross-training doesn't mean going from this to like this, but it might be, you know, and we've heard about this again, maybe just doing some silent sitting meditation, but it's having a meeting with yourself is what we often call it as well. Just spending time just to be at peace, or maybe even read a book. So just taking time to switch off. One of the biggest culprits more than anything is digital. You know, we're always on, we're literally always on our phone, we're connected. So one of the key things that I found and my clients have found is doing what I call a digital detox. And that can simply start with just, and it's hard, it's one of the hardest things, but it can simply start with a couple of hours, maybe once a week. And maybe it's a Sunday afternoon and you say, okay, from this time to this time, we're going to not use the phone, and maybe make yourself accountable to another family member. And literally you'll find, okay, what do I do? Because the phone's not there. There's this thing called, I think it's called a phantom ringing or phantom vibration, that we're so used to this thing always going off, even though it may be on vibrate, that in fact, when it's off, we still think it's we're like, oh, is my phone gone? Oh, is my phone gone? So this often is the biggest culprit. So to slow down, to speed up, this is a quick fix. It's taking time, starting with a couple of hours a week, and then ramping up over time to maybe a full day. And it's going to be hard because we're so wired, pun intended, to be connected. So let's try and disconnect to reconnect.
So it makes so much sense. I saw one study that said that even just having your phone out on the table when you're having a meal with people lowers the connection that you have with them. And I know for me, if it's after, it starts to get early evening and I'm still like checking email, and it's usually not like there's something timely coming up, like I'm really waiting for something. My head, like I actually physically notice my eyes start to hurt, my head hurts. Yeah. And for me, that's my indication to put it away. But it's such a reflex. Like the moment we have nothing to do. Yeah. To just immediately feel like we have to pick up our phones.
There's actually a study that says that you're going to laugh at this, our closest relationship is with this device here.
Oh my gosh.
Because it's the last thing we look at before we go to bed, and the first thing we look at in the morning. And even in the middle of the night, it's right by our sides. And so we never leave home without it. And this is device that is keeping us hostage. And it's often, this is what drives our burnout rate, because without this, not saying it's not important, but in a contained manner. But if you think when you're sleeping in the morning, the reason why we're like, let me check my email. Oh my God, first thing in the morning, we're up, we're doing all that. But what about if you could carve time to say, let's just have some me time. Sure, you may have to get up a little earlier, but have some quiet time. A half hour in the morning is gold. Like a quiet time, no phone, half hour. If you can have more, even more so. But I say it's the greatest gift you can give yourself is that quiet time in the morning.
I so agree with that. I just heard an interesting stat by a researcher, and I apologize, I don't know her name, off the top of my head, who works a lot with veterans and people with PTSD, talking about like the minimum dose of meditation that's helpful for people, for calming our minds, for being ready for stressful situations. And what her research has found is 12 minutes a day, 5 days a week, which I thought was fascinating, because sometimes people just need, the financial advisors can be very rules oriented. And I found that helpful. I mean, for me personally, my meditation practice today, it was on my grateful list, because I know it calms me down so much.
Yeah. And 12 minutes can also seem a lot to a lot of people. And I get that, because when you're in a busy day, it's like 12 minutes, but I don't have to. And that even stresses you out. So there's some work been done by a professor out of Stanford, Shizar Samin, and he's written the book called Positive Intelligence. And it's all about, you're familiar with his work, using moments throughout the day and tuning into your senses. And some of the work that I've done with him also is just using small techniques, short techniques in bursts of 10 to 20 seconds to really reground you. And it's things like that I love his work. And it's as simple as, and it seems like, but 10 to 20 seconds. And I know it sounds, yes, obviously we use the breath and things like that, but it's things like, one of the techniques that I love is you could even just rub your hands together. And I know it's like rubbing your hands together, but it's rubbing your hands together so delicately that you can feel the ridges in your hand. All right. So when have we ever done that? And it's not just, okay, I'm rubbing my hands, but the whole point is that we're rewiring. There's a connection between what they call our saboteurs and our sage, just rewiring. This is a good feeling. That can even extend out to using your fingertips. And again, our unique fingertips, I'll print here, just doing this. And this is something you can do while you're in a meeting or at the office, right? No one's going to know you're doing this. You're like, it's not money, but it's grounding. Another technique is wiggling your toes. Another technique is just listening, using your senses and listening to the ambient sound. So those type of things that we all have time for those. It's just making them a habit. So sure, going to the gym and some of those things is great, but if you don't have that, it's weaving these other techniques into your life on a day-to-day basis. So yeah, I love 12 minutes is perfect. And that's where, even me and my meditation practice, I like to amp up this. But when I don't have time, when I'm on and going, I'll just sit for a second. I'll take, even if I'm on a Zoom call, if I'm on a meeting and I'm like, turn off the camera for a second, I'll wiggle my toes. I may like do this, rub my hands, take a breath, and then it's like a minute max, come back in, and somehow that's just recentered me. So that for those type of tools, I feel just really settle the heart rate down and help reduce the burnout factor as well.
I love that. Love that. Yeah. So, what are some, like if someone finds themselves kind of over the edge and maybe they're hanging on by their fingernails and they maybe haven't been as disciplined with some of the great suggestions you've had by taking breaks or, slowing down to speed up, like them, are they at the point where they just have to stop doing what they're doing, or they're going to like physically implode? Or are there things that you would recommend if someone catches themselves that far along?
I would recommend, first of all, that they get help, like they talk to someone, find a friend, a peer co-worker, because you never know who else can help you, support you around, because you don't have to carry this burden alone. Now, depending on whether they're a professional or not, they may give you good or bad advice. So be aware of that. Yes, you're sharing, but just by sharing, you want to shift that energy. Also, in sharing, I would find someone who isn't also the same place where you are, right? Because if you are, their advice might not be that meaningful. And they're like, oh yeah, I understand. I've got the same thing going on with me. And you're like, well, that's not helpful. So you want to find somewhere where, maybe when you're up, they're down. When they're down, you're up. And so you balance each other out. So the first point is definitely awareness, but sharing and letting someone know and getting help. Beyond that, it's also important if you find that one of the things I always say immediately, if you're finding things are off, and this sounds so basic, but get a physical, go see your doctor immediately, whether you feel off or not, because what happens is they're the things that start to slip, right? So the most easy thing you can do is just go for a annual physical. And often if we're burnt out, we haven't done it in a while. Because it's low on our list of to-do list. So more than anything, I say, I always tell my clients, like at least annually, maybe around your birthday, like just use that as a reminder to go see one. But if you're off, then literally after this call, after this meeting, whatever you see, go book a physical, because that will be your grounding. And there they can get your blood work done and all of that. So you'll have data to know how well or not well you might be. And then from there, you might see someone professionally who can either help you with your workload to guide you. And if you need more or different support, that you can get it. But there's some of the key things. The key thing is to know your body when you're in optimal health, and when you're off, like that gauge, you're like, where do you go? And not ignore it. We've got to give ourselves permission to take action. Like enough with the excuses already. Right? Because we all make them, I make them, we do make them. We're like, oh, but I'm too busy. Like, no, you got to do something about it. Yeah.
And what if you, if there's someone on your team, like I was in an organization where I've been consulting for years, and it's a busy, leanly staffed organization. And one of the people there was working so hard that she literally had to quit her job to just do nothing. because she was past that and on burnout.
Yeah.
So if you see someone on your team going too strong, you can tell maybe they're not themselves, or you just like, what are some things you can do to support people in your life that you may see heading down that path that's not helpful for anybody, certainly not them?
Yeah, one of the first thing is definitely to, as we say, have a conversation with them. Like, I mean, at least like know that, and depending on your relationship, like know that you are there for them. Let them know that you're there for them, and just let them know that you see some things are off. I actually had a team member when I was consulting, and he was in that same situation. I was his manager, and he was just completely off. He actually came and goes, I hate this project. I hate this work. I hate what I'm doing. And the good manager I was, I talked him off the ledge, but I realized that I needed to give him some tools to help coping through that time. And at the time, which was useful, what I said to him was, even though he was in the office for 8 hours, he was taking his work home with him, physically and mentally. So what would happen is, yes, sure, we were on site consulting with a client, but then in the breaks, there was like talk about it. And at the water cooler, when he went home at night, we were on the road, so he would talk to his peers and like, oh yeah, this really sucks. So what should be an 8-hour job or consulting gig now became a 13-hour experience, which was going in. So one of the things I said to him was like, listen, the work we're doing, yes, it's a long project. Yes, it's a lot of work, but I want you to contain how much time you're spending on the project. Put your time in, but in between, the moments in between, it's all about the moments. Pause, do something different, and here's some things. So don't engage chatter at the water cooler. I know it's different now because we don't have water.
We have no water coolers.
Yeah, but don't engage in that, the gossip that goes around the work, because when you engage in that's more, it fires you up and you get more tired and more tired. So those are some things that I know that I've worked with my clients. And also, again, have an awareness, like, they're not, we've got the normal things where you can ask them to delegate, take work away from them and stuff like that. Those strategies work as well, but it's more giving them tools that they'll be like, no, I'll do it anyway. And, they don't need it. So try and get them some help if you can, take work away, but in a way that's not seeming like, not that they can't handle it, is to help support them. Because I think there's ways that we can do it that can seem demeaning, like you can't handle it, rather than I'm here to support you. I notice you've got a lot on your plate. Let's prioritize A, B, and C, and we'll hang tight on this for now. So you can help them deprioritize. Often they're looking for permission from you to guide them, right? So if we're leading a team, they're looking for us to give them permission to, not do certain things or deprioritize things. And we've got to be aware of that as leaders, that we can say, okay, listen, this is what we're going to focus on. Don't worry about this for now. And that helps as well.
That's really helpful. And I think we can take that advice and put a mirror in front of it to be a leader for ourselves, to give yourself, like yesterday, I realized I kind of felt really complete at the work that I did. And I had some errands to run and I left early. And it felt like I gave myself permission to do that. I mean, no, it didn't. I was the only one that had to give that. Nobody cared. But sometimes I think we need to do that for ourselves too, to give ourselves permission to take a mental health day or to take off a little bit early.
Yeah, it really is important. And, I always say that as we get to define, now we're working at home a lot or we're running our own practices, so we can carve that time up differently. Sure, we still need to do the work. We need to meet the deliverables. We need to service our clients. But who says you can't maybe take an extra half hour in the morning for yourself to do what you need to do? Who says you can't take a half hour? So, and I know it's super busy, but maybe we've heard the things of go for a walk, but just to take time out for yourself and plan those times, schedule that time, block out your calendar is also, so meetings don't get booked during that time. And more than anything, we've got to give ourselves permission to do that and hold ourselves accountable and have someone to help us do that as well.
Beautiful. So we just have a minute or so left, Kafi. Is there one last really important point you want to make sure that our people watching this or listening to it know, or anything I didn't ask about that you want to make sure that we cover?
Yeah, I really do. I think one of the key things is where we are in life and what we're doing now, just with all that's happened over the last few, I say months, it feels like years now. I think we got to get down to the real thing that's going on. And what I would ask you and everyone else and the listeners to do is really try and connect with that belly. Is that fire still burning brightly? Right? Because often we're just going through the motion. We're going through the motions of life because that's what we're used to. So I'm all about what's happening to that fire in your belly. Is it still bright? Are you doing what you're supposed to be doing? Are you still on the right trajectory? Or is this like, what am I doing all this for? So if you connect to that fire in your belly, and it may not be an instant answer, but you'll know, is it still burning brightly for what you want to do? And if not, perhaps it's time to change direction, right? Perhaps it's time to look into a different currency of success. And maybe it's not just about the money, but maybe it's a different currency of success. Maybe it's well-being, maybe it's status, maybe it's something different, right? So that's what I would say. It's really connect to that fire in your belly.
I love that. Thank you, Kafi. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Really great and important information. If people want to learn more about you or your keynote speaking or your consulting, where should they go?
Sure. The best place is to go to kafilondon.com, and that's KAFI London.com. And that's where they'll find out everything there is. And I'd love to hear from anyone who has questions, or just even to have a chat. So if someone would just even like to have a chat and say, this is going on either for myself, for themselves, or their team, or their organization, then it's something definitely, it's all about, I'm all about light in helping you reignite that fire in your belly so you can go on and take over the world. So yeah.
Thank you so much.
Oh, it's been so fun.
Yeah.
Thank you, Ellen.
And thank you, all of you watching and listening to this. We're so grateful that you're here. Again, my name is Ellen Rogin, and you can learn more about me at ellenrogin.com. And if you go to ellenrogin.com/horse's mouth, you can download my special report, which is what extraordinary advisors know that others don't. And the question to ponder today is, how big of an impact are you willing to make? And are you willing to slow down to speed up? Remember, be great and create great every single day.